Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. There's been a huge jump in the number of visits to Whitehorse's safe consumption site for drug users. This month alone, there have been around 1,800 visits. That is more than ever for the Blood Ties Four Directions Center. For more on this, we're joined by Gabrielle Plonka. She's in our Whitehorse studio. So, Gabrielle, what do these numbers tell us?
Yeah, so the surge in numbers has been really monumental in the last couple of months. 1,800 visits so far in February is a record-breaking number, even compared to January when there were nearly 1,400 visits. Just to compare, there were only about 600 visits last December. All-time visitation from when the site opened in 2021 was only at about 8,500 at the end of the year. So in the past 2 months, they've already hit 1/3 of that all-time number. I spoke with the executive director, Jill Allhouse, yesterday. She was saying that about 95% of visitors are coming to use the smoking room. Most folks are smoking crack cocaine or down, which is the street term for fentanyl. The varying toxicity of fentanyl is what's making it so dangerous. The drugs are also sometimes laced with benzodiazepines. That only increases the risk of a more complicated overdose. So having the increased number of visitors while the drug supply is potentially so toxic is huge, especially when the goal is keeping drug users safe.
Just really astronomical numbers there. How did the executive director of Blood Ties respond to those numbers?
Yeah, so when I spoke with Allhouse yesterday, she actually checked those updated numbers for February for me, and she was stunned to see 1,800 for February already. She said nobody could have guessed that this jump in numbers was coming, but there was definitely a few contributing factors. The site did just extend their operating hours in January, so now they're opening earlier, they're closing later, and they're open 7 days a week instead of 5. That's been really powerful and becoming part of a daily routine for folks, not having to wonder if the site is open or check the day, but knowing that it is. She also said that her team has been working really hard to build relationships with the community, and that does take time. The uptick is definitely evidence that some trust has been built, and they've succeeded in making it feel like a safe place for at least some folks. So that has helped with word of mouth, she said, and more folks are telling their friends about the site. And finally, unfortunately, she says that increased visitation usually follows an uptick in overdoses in the community. So folks are losing community members and looking to keep themselves safe.
What is the government of Yukon saying about all of this?
Well, the extension of the site's hours was included in the government's downtown safety plan. So they released that plan last year to combat addiction and homelessness and increase community safety. Last week, Health Minister Tracy Ann McPhee said that these are signs the safety plan is working. She noted that nearly 70 overdoses have been reversed at the consumption site since 2021. Another 50 have been reversed at the Whitehorse shelter just this winter. So it is saving lives to have trained individuals at these places. Allhouse did say, however, that we really need safe supply. There are new substances appearing like carfentanil, which is 100 times more potent than fentanyl. We do have a window on regulating fentanyl before more potent substances take over, but there is a fear that the window is closing and radical action will be required.
Thank you for all your work on this, Gabrielle.
Thanks very much.
The Yukon Ombudsman says the territory's education department needs to improve its communication procedures, specifically procedures that were found to be lacking after a sexual abuse scandal at Hidden Valley Elementary School. The department didn't tell parents an educational assistant had abused a student in 2019 until a year and a half later, and only after media reports on a lawsuit filed by the victim. A parent complained that the situation was unfair, triggering the ombudsman to investigate. Today, Jason Pedler released 8 recommendations. He says policy and procedures may not sound exciting, but they play a crucial role in ensuring government functions properly, particularly in crisis situations.
Often time is of the essence, and it's important that depending on the type of scenario, that employees know what they need to do in what circumstance and who is to be accountable, who is the decision maker, for example.
The 8 recommendations include creating a master checklist for how to respond to serious incidents in schools and to change existing policy so that the department's deputy minister must sign off on decisions about whether to inform parents about allegations involving harm to a student by an adult. The Ombudsman has requested the Education Department provide a progress update in 6 months. A French priest accused of sexually abusing Inuit children in Nunut will be allowed to remain a member of the Oblates congregation. Johannes Revoir lives in Lyon, France. He's long faced allegations that he sexually abused Inuit children during his time in Nunavut. An arrest warrant was issued in 2022 for the priest, who is now in his mid-90s. He was accused of assaulting a girl in Arvit and Whale Cove between 1974 and 1979. French authorities later denied an extradition request from Canadian authorities. Oblates in Canada tried appealing to leadership in Rome to dismiss Revoir after he refused to return to Canada to face charges. Revoir has denied all allegations against him, and none have been proven in court. Inuit leaders and politicians have continued to push for the priest to face trial. An investigation by the Fifth Estate about high food prices in the North prompted tough questions in Parliament yesterday. The investigation looked at allegations that the parent company of Northmart is not passing along Nutrition North subsidies designed to keep prices low. CBC also spoke with a former Northmart employee who said the company often inflates prices beyond its rising costs. Here's what NDP leader Jagmeet Singh said about Nutrition North.
People are getting ripped off by corporate grocery stores in this country, and in the North, it's on another level. 1 liter of olive oil costs $36. Now, the federal government subsidizes corporations working in the North with a program called Nutrition North. The Nutrition North gives millions of dollars of subsidies to these companies. These companies take a third of it and don't pass it on to consumers. So will the Liberal government reform Nutrition North so the benefit goes to the people, not to the CEOs of corporations working in the North?
Northern Affairs Minister Dan Van Dal responded by saying the government knows prices are too high. He said they're working with territorial governments, Indigenous partners, and Northern residents to bring prices down. Northmart's parent company disputes the allegations against them. It says operating in northern and remote communities comes with higher costs. A Missing Persons Act is making its way through the NWT legislature. That act, and the fact that the territory doesn't already have it, was brought into the spotlight after the disappearance of Frank Grubin last May. Natalie Pressman reports.
I'm standing here at the monument for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It sits next to the NWT legislature, where a Missing Persons Act is now being considered. That act would give RCMP additional powers to access a missing person's health records, financial records, recent phone calls that they've made to see where those phone calls have hit cell towers. That legislation already exists in 8 provinces and in Yukon, and now it's making its way through the NWT legislature. Justice Minister R.J. Simpson introduced that bill in the legislature and had second reading for it yesterday, and now it's been referred to a committee of regular MLAs. In May 2023, Gwich'in and Inuvialuit man Frank Grubin went missing. RCMP have said they've thoroughly explored the possible avenues of his disappearance, and a Missing Persons Act would allow police to dig deeper for Grubin's case and other unsolved missing persons investigations. In December, there were 80. MLAs will consider the bill with the public and with experts, and will bring that bill back to the Assembly for discussion in the spring sitting. Natalie Pressman, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Healthcare staffing has long been a problem in the North, and a nationwide shortage of staff has only been making it more difficult. Today, NWT Health and Social Services Minister Lisa Semler told the Legislative Assembly that recruitment and retention problems still persist. But she did highlight one big success.
As a graduate of the Aurora College Northern Nursing Program, I am thrilled to share that All 16 Aurora College nursing graduates from 2023 have secured indeterminate employment with the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority, 15 of whom have completed the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing Mentorship Program, created in 2022 in response to the national nursing shortage.
Semler says the territory is actively recruiting for vacant family doctors and specialist doctors across the NWT. A deal has been reached for the launch of a national Pharmacare program in Canada. Now, it hasn't been introduced yet, but some Canadians are already being told they may not be a part of it. Alberta has announced plans to opt out. Julia Wong has that story.
For 29 years, Leslie Thompson has lived with diabetes and juggled the costs around it.
Type 1 diabetes is super costly. You have your cost of insulin, you have blood glucose strips. If you're on a continuous glucose monitor, there's that cost.
Thompson was thrilled by news of a Liberal NDP deal to lay the framework for a national Pharmacare program that would cover contraceptives and diabetes treatments. But Alberta says it was not consulted and now says it plans to opt out.
Delivery of healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction. Federal government is overstepping their authority here.
Instead, the health minister says Alberta will ask for its share of the per capita funding to enhance existing programs.
Give us the dollars, allow us to actually enhance the programs that we have rather than create more bureaucracy.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, one of the architects of the deal, is expressing disappointment.
I think it'll be very difficult for the Premier in Alberta to explain to people in Alberta who can't afford their diabetes medication why they're turning down an investment that would cover everyone in that province.
A national Pharmacare program would ease the burden on the healthcare system, this doctor says.
If you have women who don't have unwanted pregnancies, so if you've got patients with diabetes who are able to, check their blood sugars as often as they want to, take their medications, check their blood pressure, you have a healthier population.
As for Thompson, she wishes Alberta would opt in to a national program.
We need help covering it. The cost for taking care of yourself with type 1 diabetes is a burden.
In a statement, Federal Health Minister Mark Holland says the government plans to table Pharmacare legislation in the coming days. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Yukon Liberal MP Brendan Hanley says language in that legislation ensures a step towards universal Pharmacare.
I think this is the start of something historic. You do need to have that legislation to begin with. But meanwhile, it's important to point out all of the steps that have been taken so far. The Pan-Canadian Pharmaceutical Alliance, for instance, which is this cooperative agreement between jurisdictions about bulk buying, and also the establishment of the Canadian Drug Agency, and as well as the rare diseases, the funding for rare diseases for coverage. So all of those are part of that overall picture of moving towards comprehensive Pharmacare.
Hanley says details will be shared with the territories once legislation in Parliament has been presented. He could not commit to a timeline for when Yukoners could see public coverage for contraceptive and diabetic drugs at the pharmacy. Operational and funding agreements will still need to be finalized between different levels of government first.
When my grandfather, Charlie Chaplin, first arrived in Hollywood, it was a place of dreams. But my grandfather clashed with some very powerful forces in America.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Stand away from the stand!
I'm Una Chaplin. This is Hollywood Exiles. It's about a war of ideas that tore apart friendships, ended careers, and affected families like mine.
Hollywood Exiles, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Does public transit really need more police officers? And so this is it.
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
It is now believed that Titan was destroyed. It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? How is that even possible? Well, with a little bit of help, I think we can explain it.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes your world.
All right.
Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
It goes on like this, and on and on and on and on.
It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want. On Canada's News app. Download the free CBC News app.
Bad hair days. We all have them.
Even as scientists, I think I know my place. It's not making art.
What? This is a whale?
That's incredible.
I'm piloting a boat in the fjords of Norway. I love this job.
You never listen to me.
You never think things through.
Your honeymoon phase is officially over. We never
What
had a honeymoon phase.
You really gonna make me say it?
Oh, yeah.
Fine. I need you, Max.
So much drama. I love it. You ever get tired of that? Stop get tired of that.
The government of British Columbia has issued a formal apology to members of the province's Doukhobor community. Decades ago, families from a Russian pacifist sect known as the Sons of Freedom were torn apart in a dispute over education and language. Lindsay Duncombe has the story.
This is an incredibly emotional day for Doukhobor survivors and their descendants. About 24 came here to Victoria to hear the apology. They gathered on the steps of the legislature and sang and prayed in Russian, a language they were not allowed to speak as children. Many had waited decades to hear this apology from BC Premier David Eby.
Today, on behalf of the province of British Columbia, we acknowledge and apologize for these past injustices.
The children were Doukhobors, Russian Christian pacifists. A Doukhobor group known as the Sons of Freedom clashed with government and law enforcement. They didn't want to send their children to public school, so the government captured the kids and forced them to live in a former tuberculosis sanitarium. They could only see their parents twice a month, and families were separated by a chain link fence.
This is where the healing's going to start. They'll apologize, compensate me. 78, I could enjoy my life. Apology was great. Compensation, a slap in the face.
This apology comes with $10 million in compensation. Now, that money is earmarked for healing and for education. But for some survivors, it's not enough. They want to see checks cut to them. They want personal compensation. And they say that is a fight they're going to continue. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Victoria.
Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's weekly economic update covered a number of issues today. Freeland and two of her cabinet colleagues talked about so-called green bonds, getting more competition into the grocery business, and more federal spending to get more homes built.
Today, I'm pleased to share that we're going to be rolling out agreements with 8 different home building organizations through this fund across Canada. It's going to involve a total investment of $123 million from the federal government, which we expect will yield more than 5,600 homes, affordable homes across Canada.
The money will come from the government's existing Affordable Housing Innovation Fund. The builders will be developing and using new methods and technologies to get homes built more quickly and more economically. The money will also be used to help young people get into the housing market through rent-to-own and shared equity programs. A new real estate survey suggests more Canadians are waiting for signs that interest rates will drop before making the decision to buy a home. It says many potential buyers have sidelined their dreams of home ownership since the Bank of Canada began raising its key lending rates nearly 2 years ago. Scott Peterson has those details.
This report out this morning gives us a real litmus test as to the thinking that Canadians have before getting into the real estate market. And there's a lot of money on the sidelines. We know this anecdotally as far as people hesitating getting into the market until they get a sense that the interest rates are coming down or until there's an actual announcement. This is why this report from Royal LePage is interesting. And that is a large percentage of people, 56% of people are postponing their property search as a result of rising interest rates. And that goes back to March 2022 when the Bank of Canada first started raising interest rates, and we saw a pullback in the real estate market proportionally there. 51% of Canadians are planning to get back into the market as soon as there is some drop in interest rates, and 10% of those surveyed say that they only need a drop of 25 basis points for them to begin to jump back into this real estate market. Now, among those ready to jump back in, 44% on planning to get a fixed rate mortgage, either a 4-year or 5-year. By far, that is the most popular mortgage vehicle out there. 22% say that they plan to get a variable rate mortgage, even though variable rates are beneficial in an environment of lowering interest rates going forward. Now, following the first rate hold by the Bank of Canada, that was last March, there was a surge of economic activity within the real estate market, but the authors of this report expect to see a real surge by this spring, and at that time we are also expecting to get some sort of indication from the Bank of Canada as to when interest rates are coming down, if not an actual announcement thereafter. And there is one caveat with this. Royal LePage, of course, is in the business of selling real estate, but they see a very strong market coming this spring. Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
The government of Nunut is making home ownership easier for its employees. Minister of Finance Lauren Kusagak made the announcement today in the Legislative Assembly. Kusagak said the housing allowance paid to GN employees is more than doubling from $400 to $1,000 starting on April 1st.
Encouraging staff to move from subsidized staff housing into homes of their own is a key focus of our government's mandate and of the Nunavut 3000 strategy.
This is the first time the allowance has been increased since 2008. A traveler nurse from BC recently had a terrifying encounter with a moose in the Yukon. It happened while she was walking 2 dogs near Watson Lake. She was videotaping one of the dogs enjoying the snow when this happened.
I took these 2 dogs and we were just out for a walk, and I had my phone out because the dog was jumping. There's lots of snow, so he's jumping like a rabbit. I thought it was cute, so I was filming him. And then he started barking up a tree, so I figured there was a squirrel. And next thing I knew, I heard this big loud like a horse. And I looked up and there was a giant moose standing there, and I already had my phone out, so I was like, oh, cute, like I'll take a video. And next thing I knew, he was like running towards us. Don't even know what happened after that, but the moose ran away. So I was pretty scared. It all happened so fast, and then all of a sudden it was over, and I was like, did that just happen? Like he came so close to me, but yeah, it happened.
Black History Month is wrapping up this week. Iqaluit residents joined the February celebrations with multiple events promoting and celebrating Black culture. The executive director for the African Caribbean Association in Nunavut says they received excellent feedback from people and added that it's important to learn about the similarities of different cultures.
Learn and understand the way Inuit people live. Understand the Inuit way of life. As we share our values, as we preserve our values as Africans or people of African or Caribbean descent, we need to know where we stand.
Black History Month events are still happening in Iqaluit. Tonight, Black historian Amadou Ba is at the Astro Theatre talking about colonialism, African heroes, and resistance. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
My dad was a railway porter. It was just about the only job a black man could get. But he had big plans for us. Music would be our ticket out of poverty. I knew we couldn't afford that piano, so I practiced twice as hard.
Nice, Daisy. Okay, Oscar, let's hear it.
Turns out, I wasn't half bad. Then I found jazz, or it found me. It wasn't all easy, though. I faced a lot of hate. But I found my stage. They call me the man with 4 hands. Well, I don't know about that, but let's see how far this ticket takes me.
From Montreal to Carnegie Hall and far beyond, Oscar Peterson became one of the most recorded and celebrated jazz musicians of all time.
My name is Amanda Paris, and I am constantly thinking about culture, race, and social issues. So I want to push these conversations forward.
We found that there was animal meat fat in plastic synthetic hair.
There was a time where I'm like, should I have kids because the kids are going to be black?
I've been fired from my dream job. What's the worst that can happen now?
Now is the time to take the group chat to the real world. A 6-part series. This is For the Culture.
Watch free on CBC Gem.
Closing this case gets you one step closer to you getting back on the squad and keeping you out of prison.
You're not a detective, you're a con artist. You have a driver's license, right?
Of course, I have 9. If you're going to be a cop, what would you be?
Nothing. My dad raised me to be a cop. That's who I am. Stay here.
You're adorable.
You guys are making this entire station look like a circus.
He's busy trying to solve a murder. What are you doing?
Thanks for having my back.
Look at you.
Is this your girlfriend? This is not my girlfriend. She's way too cool to be your girlfriend. She's not way too cool to be my girlfriend.
1940 dalalaw 50 saling urak luwang kalawak tungan. Jambak tuwalo lakalawam. Pilatok talo wama. Wakalaw yalawak simutan na. Sibulak tak pilatok tawama. Pilakta simalak simuiglak tawalak simugama.
Treaty in Cree is Naskometoen, an oral agreement. And our agreements were always spoken. For George Spence, the core of treaty was Wichihioen, to help one another.
And so we, the commissioners...
He was there for the making of Treaty 9, where the Cree were told...
We will honor this agreement together, for as long as the sun shines and the waters flow.
The Cree made their mark because they were assured that the land would be shared, and they would always be able to harvest what they needed. George Spence was my great-grandfather. In his life, he saw many promises of the treaty go unfulfilled.
Treaties were essential to the creation of Canada. First Nations still fight for the agreements to be honored.
Hey, you're some friends, aren't you? Stand here and now you try and blackmail her. You disgust me. Every one of you.
Coronation Street. Watch free on CBC Gem.